What I love about this is that, and we've seen it happen, right? There's kind of two levels of learning that happen. One is the foundations of change, so you're learning about the content and the program, but the other is if you're doing it with in a cohort, but certainly if you're doing it amongst peers, that common language, you're learning about sort of how to apply it within your own organization. So you're actually accelerating it that much faster, which I think is really quite significant. Let's dive in. I want to go into kind of give everybody a little bit of a lens. So what I've got up on the screen, Rachel, you let me log in a little while ago, and everyone can see here I've kind of, down the left-hand side are some progress bars, and it says here, Introduction to the Science of Change. So you said that this one is the Foundations of Change course has got a couple of modules. This is one called the Science of Change. And as I go through this now and I'm scrolling through, I see that there's a change book. There's a PDF that I can download and I can read. There's some context, and then there's video content. So this is all sort of rich media, right? This is something that I can watch, I can listen to, and it'll take me through the process. Is that right?
Yeah, and like I said earlier, every class, every course within the certification program sort of has its own personality or character. Foundations of Change being one of the sort of richest foundational from a content standpoint. We use a lot of video of our folks, the book authors, our sort of master facilitators and consultants, folks who have been kind of in the field with clients, telling stories, giving great context, and providing a lot of color to the content. In addition to looking through scenarios, case studies, examples. So we use a lot of that type of exercise and activity in our foundations course to really say, like, okay, here's the idea. What does this look like in practice? What does this look like in a real example? Or what is, and giving the learner options to say, well, here's the choice I might make if I were in that situation. And a lot of them have no right or wrong answers. A lot of them are contextual to say, if you take this path, this is the implication for it. And it really is for the learner to evaluate what different types of implications are involved in different decisions along the change journey.
I'm looking now at the sort of survive and thrive dimension, which I know is a core part of the book, and it goes into sort of some of those physiological elements as well as our bodies and how we respond. That's pretty rich. So do I need to kind of understand human biology and something like that to get into this, or does it give me what I need to know and only what I need to know?
It will give you what you need to know. And this is one of the reasons that I say Foundations of Change, while not a required prerequisite to the rest of the courses, is elemental and is always where I would start, because we really go into both the idea of survive and thrive and how we are wired as humans to respond in times of change. And it is as basic as that. And it is around creating both self-awareness, but awareness of others and awareness of the triggers and signals that we put out and how we receive them, and how we can actually be in control of some of that and take more ownership over some of that, so that we have a much more positive influence in the changes that we're driving. And that becomes a backdrop that somebody can then refer to throughout the rest of the courses. And similarly, the 4 change principles. So management and leadership, head and heart, select few, diverse many, and have to and want to. Those general concepts, when Foundations of Change says the art and science behind successful transformation, the science is the research. The 8 accelerators, that is the proven framework over 50 plus years that just continues to hold strong. The art behind it is being able to understand that human hardwiring, being able to understand those fundamental principles that you can pressure test everything up against. And they become just such an easy reference for anybody to use. And that's why is one of the really core reasons that I always say do foundations first.
Yeah, because in a way, the foundations also taps into the most recent work that we at Kotter have been doing around understanding this sort of what we didn't even know 10 years ago, because we didn't
Right.
have access to the fMRIs and research that's being done in labs around the world on brains and human performance. But it's bringing this level of sort of how humans behave to an eternal challenge around how we lead change, and frankly, lead change in an environment that is increasingly disruptive and disrupted and unpredictable and uncertain. And our 200,000-year-old brain, it kind of is not really geared up for that. So putting those things side by side.
Yeah, and when you asked who the program is for, that's one of the reasons it's so universal, is because all of us are now operating in an environment where change is constant, right? So that's really one of the big things in our world today, is that change isn't episodic anymore. It's a lot of change all the time, and we're all experiencing it. So in one way, it is this universal experience. And in another way, every single one of us is so unique that to also be able to understand that the person sitting next to me at work, that my spouse, that my child, that my boss is going to experience this differently than I am. That's where sort of the complexity comes in. And that's where really learning to build this muscle to be more adaptable in this disrupted environment that's not slowing down is critical for all of us to be able to have that capability and have that skill set. It's something I wish I could have learned as a kid instead of learning now as an adult.
It's interesting, and a lot of people might not know this, but I think it was back in 1992 that Dr. Kotter wrote the book Corporate Culture and Performance.
Mm-hmm.
And you just talked about adaptability and agility. And what's interesting is that the idea of agility and adaptability were key as insights that he had discovered then in terms of those companies that could handle, or not that could handle, but that would perform well, right? So there was a correlation between those attributes and performance. But it was a good, so that was 1992. It was a good 9 years before we really started to see the agile methodology that is used so often right now, certainly in software development. But it was a good 10 years before that started to manifest. So that's implicit here too. The idea of, what do we know, not just from today, but what do we know is deeply rooted in terms of performance across the board.